we still have two screens.
Okay,
It's
I'll
okay,
figure these out.
Okay. Okay. All right, sounds good. All right, well, we will call our meeting to order for September Education Committee of the Kansas State Board of Nursing. We do have a quorum as we have over 5 members present. There is an on-site package, so I just want to call that to everyone's attention. There are a couple items within that on-site packet. The full document that Janelle's compiled for us with pass rates
The
and
summary reports, yes.
how everything's going, and then we've also provided the update from Fort Scott with regards to the report that we asked from them. So that is in your on-site packet. We'll review that when we get to that piece of the agenda. Moving on to additions and revisions of the agenda, I do have one. I would like to change the order. So item C, Education Annual Report, I would like to move that up above B. The follow-up on the low first-time pass rates. It will just be altering that.
I move to approve the September 12th, 2023 agenda as amended.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Okay, motion carries. All right, let's talk about some announcements. I have a couple of announcements here. First of all, I'd really like to extend a sincere thank you, not only from this committee, but from the entire board to Pete Bonneblast. You've served a long time on this committee, and you've been a very influential to many, a mentor to many. That there are schools that look to you as a resource, so not only the board, but there are universities that really consider you a true expert in your field, and we do here at this committee as well, because we've done a lot. So thank you very much. It's sad to say this is the last meeting, and my understanding is the way our regulations are written, you're not eligible for another term on this committee right away. So we really appreciate what you've done. Thank you. Any other announcements? Yep.
I just want to, this Carol Moreland, Administrator, I just want to introduce our newest member of the Education Division. Stacy Johnson, right there. Stacy is taking what will be like our secretarial position. So she'll be the one that will be answering the phone for the Education Division. So you will get to know Stacy. Michelle's helping her orient. And so we're really looking forward to working with Stacy.
Let's do any other announcement. All right, approval of minutes from the June 13th meeting.
Madam President, I move to approve the June 13th, 2023 Education Committee minutes as written.
Thank you, Patty. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
See, any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Okay, motion carries. I'm gonna hand it over to Janelle to do her officer compliance report, but one more maybe announcement before I do that, Janelle. I really want to recognize the staff at the board. I know this will come up tomorrow at the full board meeting, but in August, NCSBN recognized this board for Achievement in the Governance Award, which is a big deal. It is a very big deal. The one board is chosen throughout the nation and beyond. Remember, NCSBN is international, so there's Canadian representatives there. And this award was given to the board, and I truly believe that a lot of the reasons this award was earned was because of the work of the staff. So when you hear staff reports and you look at the detail that Janelle has put into this, it's one example of why Kansas State Board is truly recognized throughout NCSBN as one of the leading boards. So I appreciate what you do, Janelle, sincerely. I appreciate Carol and this entire team. We talked about each of the members that lead a division within the board when we were there receiving this award, but they really do a tremendous job, and the work, we don't recognize what happens behind the scenes day in and day out. So thank you.
That said, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. Janelle Martin, Education Compliance Officer. So the report this time is a little bit standard. We did have several changes again in terms of updates. So I do want to recognize we have some new administrators that might be with us today as well. Kansas City, Kansas Community College had a change. Dr. Bronwyn McFadden, who has been a faculty there, has been chosen to be the new director of nursing education there for their nursing and allied health. So I want to welcome her. She started on August the 2nd, so fairly new. Newman University, Teresa Vetter retired, and Ashton Clarkson took over that program on July 1st. Flint Hills Technical College has a new, I believe, interim director for right now. Anna Crabtree will be taking over as the director of their practical nursing and allied health. Garden City Community College also had a retirement. Patsy Veller, who's also been on our board for many years, retired. And effective 8/1, they have an interim director. Shelley Emheiser has taken that position. They're looking for a full-time director. And those are the big pieces. A lot of what you see in here is just kind of the standard, what we've been working on, a lot of FQRs. I'm happy to see those. We have a lot of new initial faculty reports. So it looks like people are starting to find a few more people to help with not only clinical, but full-time faculty as well. So it's really good to see that. Other thing I just want to bring your attention to is I did attend the 2023 Kansas Nurse Educator Conference that was held at Newman University in Wichita in July. And I just, after just the announcement that was made and Dee being on our board, there was a little snafu with one of the speakers. It was a great conference. One of the speakers was not able to get there. Weather kept her back. And so Teresa Vetter and Dee Bonneblest came in and gave a couple of great presentations in place of what was supposed to have been there, and very helpful. Dee had a lot of really good things to say, and I just really appreciated the way they both came in and did that and provided such a great resource for that group. So my thanks, and so glad to have you here as well. I think the virtual NCLEX conference is actually this week on Thursday. Is that already? No, it's next week. Next week. I'm sorry, my weeks are very confused. They are still doing it virtually. There still is time to register if you're interested. It's a one-day conference, September the 21st. I'm assuming they're going to be talking a little bit about what's going on with the next gen NCLEX. We've already had kind of the initial quarterly report, and it's all good news. So I'm glad to hear that. So it'd be interesting to see what they have to say in terms of what that follow-up is. But so anybody who hasn't had a chance to. The other thing I want to just put a plug in for is the CADNY Fall Forum, which will be October 19th and 20th. It's being held on the campus of Butler Community College. They've graciously agreed to host again. Registration deadline October 9th. So they hope to see as many people as possible there for that event. But other than that, unless there are questions, I'm going to make that my report.
Thank you, Janelle. Good work. Okay, so this is the one quarter that we don't have site visits.
Right.
So we'll pick this back up
Oh, yeah.
in December, we'll be full of those again. So we're ready for our new business and our major curriculum change requests. We'll start with Osawatomie State Hospital.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Sherry Cole, and I'm on the faculty of Osawatomie State Hospital's LMHT program. I'm Debbie Brinkley, also faculty of the program.
Tell us about the changes that you're.
Okay, what we are not doing, we're kind of an interesting program in that we differ, even though we're under the state board, we don't run our program like a college would with ours. All of our students are employees of Osawatomie State Hospital. And what we ran into is that we originally had a 3-level program. And the first part was always in orientation, and it was originally set up that when people went through orientation, they met all the criteria, to be accepted for state board. But as things changed, we found it was more and more difficult to justify people in orientation actually meeting a level 1. So we met and we discussed that we really needed to eliminate those hours and keep orientation separate. Even though at the end of that they became mental health technicians, the material that they were getting did not meet the standards to count for the state board. So what we've done is we've rearranged our program, become like a bi-level program. The first part would be for mental health technicians. It would really enhance their ability to go out and work with our patients. We've looked at the hours, we meet all the requirements. If we have the technical health skills, which are the nursing skills, we have mental health concepts, which covers a wide variety of things like ethics and different areas of mental health, and then our psych intervention. And we've added a few hours to that in that we wanted to really enhance the work with communication. And at the end of that program, they would meet all the requirements to go on into what would be our new second level, which would be our licensing level. And overall, we've rearranged our curriculum in that we meet all the hours, the 450 hours theory, the 450 hours of clinical. In fact, we've actually added an additional 10 hours of theory. So we ended up with over the 900 hours. I'm not done. Debbie, you got anything?
So there's not really any changes to the second level where they become eligible for licensure.
Right, there's really very few changes. The only thing that was a change, we did add more hours into this psych intervention. Because we felt like we could have maybe 2 or 3 of the first level, the new level ones, and then they would be eligible to go on into the second level, which would be really the meat of the LMHT program, the human growth and development, behavioral science, the human body health and illness, the psych intervention. Prior, when they were in that level, they were just getting information on doing groups and that type of thing. So we added hours there. But we have this, actually, it's the same thing, the pharmacology and drug administration. We added a few hours on that because we felt that was such an important part of our curriculum. But it basically stays the same. The material and content, everything will be the same. We just rearranged some of the hours to meet the 450 hours of theory and clinical.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the major curriculum change request from Osawatomie State Hospital, the LMHT program, to change from a 3-level program to a 2-level program.
Thanks, Amy. Second.
I'll second.
Thanks, Amy. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you both for
Thank
your
you
work.
very
I
much.
think
We
it's-
appreciate it.
this
We
is
look
a-
forward to having students back again.
I'm glad that you're focused on mental health. That's an important part of healthcare these days. So thank you. Great work. Benedictine College, the BSN program.
Hello, I'm Jackie Harris. I'm the director of Bennington College, and this is hopefully our final request to give phased in, right, our curriculum revision. So thank you for your patience. So what I have for today, requesting some changes for our senior level curriculum, which includes a creation of 2 new courses in our junior spring semester. Sorry, our senior fall semester. Senior fall semester. Which is carry the adult 2 course and then a clinical that goes along with that, 90 hours of clinical. And then we have revised some of our classes in our senior level spring semester, including decreasing one of our current classes to a 2 credit hour course. And I think that summarizes the 3 changes for our senior level curriculum. We've had lots of minor curriculum changes. We've revised all of our course descriptions, our course objectives, but those are the remaining 3 major curriculum revisions for our entire overview.
Just a quick check, is your capstone clinical, I had one for that as well.
Yes, we're going to increase capstone clinical hours.
Just wanted to make
Mhm.
sure that was still part of
Yes,
it.
thank
Okay.
you, Janelle. From 2 clinical hours to, or 2 credit hours to 3 credit hours for 135 clinical hours.
And just so you know, there were 5 different requests in your packet, but we put it all into one motion. It was all, as it was all part of the same curriculum. So that's why you just see one motion.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the major curriculum change request from Benedictine College School of Nursing to create a new course, Nurse 4100 Nursing Care of Adults 2, create a new clinical course, Nurse 4110 Care of Adults 2 Clinical, eliminate Nurse 4500 and replace with new course, Nurse 4800 Nursing Care of Adults 3, eliminate Nursing 4510 and create a new course, Nurse 4810 Nursing Care of Adults 3 Clinical, and revise course Nurse 4910 Capstone Clinical, and increase credit hours from 2 to 3 credit hours.
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, signify by saying no. And any abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You hopefully will not hear from me.
We are now going to. This is where we had our change in the agenda, so we will look at the NCSBN for data survey report for Kansas. I believe this is page 56 for the agenda. 63. Okay. So now would you like to walk us through this report a little bit?
Just a little bit about this, thank you, Madam Chair. They did a couple of changes to the report just to kind of do a quick. So all of the core data, all the questions they asked, there's a core 45 question that everybody gets. And this is the national report that we'll get to that will be the comparative data. So all the individual questions are here, and what they do is give us the report that shows the compliance or who answered how to what questions. What they have added is at the end of the report then is a summary of the programs that do not meet quality indicators. So the whole idea around the core survey, and one of the reasons we did this was if you remember, the NCSBN annual approval guidelines gave some other ways to look at programs besides pass rates. How can we look at programs to see if there are problems? How can we intervene earlier? What are some things we can look at? It doesn't necessarily mean because someone's low on one, that there's an issue, but it's something to look at. It's a way to look at programs. So they did add this summary, and it gives all of our programs, and it shows which ones, if they're low on some of the warning indicators, it will show that. So I thought that was a really good addition. It takes kind of all that data. There's a lot of also descriptive data in here about number of members that are, or number of graduates and admissions and faculty, all those things that go into the key indicators. So you can look at any of those individually. But I really think that summary, and that is on page 88, 89, those last 4 pages, kind of give you a really good idea. And anybody who, you're low on one, but if you start to look at I think there's 7 of them. So when you start looking at more than 2, it starts to give you a better picture, I think, or maybe at least a quick picture, and then you can look at what those are. So I think for our purposes too, it helps us as we're looking at the pass rates, as we do look at those in March, and we know where there were issues. This is a quick way to then look at those programs too, to see how they're doing on the other indicators, and kind of as a way to begin where we might ask questions about how can we look at these programs, what can we be doing to ask the right questions and maybe support them in what they're doing to get those turned around if there are issues. So I don't know what other questions you might have. We did have a couple of, there was one question within the report that created some confusion. So we're going to do some changes on that for next year. It was about maximum enrollment. And that is not a question of approval, what the number of seats that are approved by the board, because that was what we thought the question was referring to, but it was really more about what if the school puts a maximum enrollment on total number of members, whether it's a 1-year program, 2-year program, etc. So we did have to do a little bit of research on a couple of the questions, but I don't think anything substantive in terms of a change for what we're looking at with our board.
So the summary of programs not meeting the key quality indicators is actually on page 138 of the packet. It's on page 87 of the report.
Okay.
There's so many page numbers.
Right. Sorry about that.
No, that's great. So 138. There's something.
And one of the things I will point out is one of their indicators is not accredited. We do realize that there are some states that require accreditation. Kansas does not. So we don't necessarily look at that as a warning. If they're accredited, there are other things they have to answer to in terms of accreditation standards. But like I said, so what you'll see here is all of our LPN programs are going to be marked because we don't require it, and most of them, I don't think any right now any of them have it. So that is just something to be aware of. Sometimes that is the only low indicator for many of them that are listed. But I think where we can look to is the director turnover. We've talked about this a lot at our education network, looking at the number of director turnovers. And that's it. The reason is because it's just often disruptive. If you look at that in terms of also the percentage of full-time faculty and possibly turnover in faculty, those are often the indicators that are the greatest. And we know COVID created a lot of issues, and people are working with a lot more adjuncts than they ever have. And that has been a stress on a lot of programs, and you probably will see it reflected here. Some have been working with a small percentage of full-time faculty for years and have adjusted. Their programs are doing just fine. If that's their only low indicator, it doesn't seem to be an issue. It's when it's combined with some of those other things when we start to see more problems. One of the things this doesn't address, and I don't know if it ever will, is we have seen an increase in complaints, but I don't know that how that looks in terms of all the programs together. We haven't really put that data in with the rest of this to see, is it just a result of we've had some discussion at the Education Network with NCSBN about the impact of COVID on students and returning to, classes, and whether, it just seems we're seeing a lot of complaints, but I'm not sure they're necessary complaints about curriculum, that kind of thing. So we're watching that, trying to bring that to your attention if we feel like those are getting. I am working on a more formal complaint process because it has increased, and want to make sure we're documenting and following up what we need to. But anyway, I think the summary does a nice job of looking at it. I think it does kind of support some of the things we saw when we were looking at pass rates. That some of the struggles, there may be other indicators too that we could be looking at along with those pass rates. Anyone have questions about any of the data that's in there?
Okay, so let's look at page 142 and the KSBN annual report that you prepared.
Again, this is kind of our standard report. One of the things that we need to do in terms of, as an organization, part of our regulatory process. There are several things in this. This has kind of been a standard report. So the data in here is all about admissions. It is detailed by school. So we're looking at overall, and I do have a 5-year history for that. So you can look at what admissions have been and see what the changes have been. We have seen some decrease, but not necessarily as significant as some would think. We've seen a decrease, but overall, over all of our programs, it's been about 200 seats for and then that's in the BSN. But we have seen ADN is starting to go back up, and the PNs are going down just a little bit. That's what our admission is telling us. APRNs, we saw a drop this year in terms of number of admissions, and I haven't seen any other trending to give any response to that. But graduation, we did see more attrition, I think, in this past year. We had a little bit of a decrease in the number of graduates we had compared to the admissions. What I want to point out for this report on page 149 is, I think a couple of years ago, it started adding, sorry, that's the wrong page. The summary data is on page 153, and it goes through the programs, and it basically gives you what their number of seats that they're approved for, what their admissions were this last year, what their graduations were, what the pass rate was for 22. So that's not quite reflective because of the way, remember that pass rates are a calendar year, and we know that graduations are academic years. But I also added a couple of the key indicators in terms of the percentage of full-time faculty, as well as number of program directors that they've had in the last 5 years as one of and that was something that was added just to be able to see in a more, with maybe a little bit more ease, what that looks like altogether. So I think one of the things to point out is a couple of our, one of our schools that's going to be talking with us today, they've had 5 director turnovers in the last 5 years. So it does impact the program, I think, and we are looking at some indicators that would tell us that there are other things going on too that could be part of what's going on besides just the pass rate. So that data is all compiled that way. Always open to other direction if there are other things you would like to see in that report. The numbers that report in terms of admission, graduation, attrition, and articulation are part of our regulatory requirements. So I do put those in there, but that doesn't mean we can't add or tweak what you see in order to give you a better idea. If this is not quite, if this is it, this is good, then we're good. But
Any questions? Do we need to accept the KSBN report? Not
I think it's
just information. So we'll go back up to the summary pass rate reports, and this was part of, this is follow-up from the discussion we had last time about the low first-time pass rates. This is a part of your on-site packet, so I will call your attention to that. We have seen this document before, Janelle, and it just specifically calls out some of the information that you've looked at in many different tables, and this brings it together kind of in that summary format, so. Review that. And then first. I think we're gonna visit with Fort Scott Community College before we call them to the table. This morning, I believe, is the first time you're seeing this report. So
It was posted Friday. Yeah.
it was posted Friday, okay, so if you'll just take a minute to look at the summary pass rates, if you haven't had a chance to do that. That document is there for you. Would you like to join us at the table for the discussion?
I'm Jordan Howard, the Director of Nursing at Fort Scott Community College.
Thanks for being here, Jordan.
Thanks for having me.
We invited a couple schools, you being one, just to talk about the low pass rates and the concerns that we have with the program. So would you like to say anything or review the summary that you've provided with us?
Has everybody had time to look it over? Yeah. So obviously, we're not pleased with the pass rate. But I feel like we continue to make changes every semester. And then every year to continue to move forward in improving that. Our numbers have been down student-wise, and then faculty-wise as well. We are bringing on a new full-time instructor this coming month. So I think that will help, which is a change from the report in front of you. However, we're still down faculty members, so we found it extremely hard to find qualified individuals that are wanting to teach full-time. So we're looking at different opportunities with some healthcare facilities in our area to maybe do some collaboration with them to help get faculty and staff.
I have a question, Jordan. So I see the benchmarks that are here. But I see just some explanations, but do you actually have numbers that tell us how you obtain benchmarks?
For which one?
Well, for a lot of them, but I would go with, especially your Likert scales, you know.
Yeah, so I use a 5-point Likert's scale to come up with those.
Okay, and right now it's below 0.7, is that correct?
Greater than
Greater than,
for our student satisfaction, correct?
okay. Do you have a cumulative number for that?
I just averaged them out. I do back at the office, but not here in front of you.
Okay. And then your scores on your standardized test, they tie 2.5% of the grade, but what does that equate to as far as the number?
So 2.5% of their weighted total. But we haven't had so we have a rubric, not a rubric, but a scale that we go off of for the score. So I think the lowest the students can get is a 61%. And then the highest, of course, is 100%. But we haven't had like a specific benchmark to meet up until this semester, where we have the 825. So, and the 825 was, we came up with that number because I track all of the students exit HESI scores with the first time pass rate, time that it takes, all of that stuff. So for HESI, they recommend 850, which gives a 94% probability. 900 is 97%, but I was seeing that our students were doing about 825 on a 3-year average, so that's where we came up with that. So like I said, this is the first semester that we are doing that. We also are putting back in live NCLEX review, which we got away from that because it was during the pandemic and we switched to virtual. Students seem to like that. So we want to continue that, just add more to it in hopes that the students are ready, they're prepared.
Your admission GPH 3.0, is that a new?
No, that's
It's always been that way?
as, you know, since I was a student there.
Really?
So for Jordan, the question I have is, do you have any sort of remediation process in place as part of your curriculum?
Yeah.
I know you're down faculty.
Yep, yeah, so we have, remediation is optional, it was mandatory. If students got less than 80% on an exam. Faculty thought it was too much on the students, because then they were looking at material that was in the past rather than looking forward. So they were afraid it was bogging them down, so they decided to change that.
So you changed it to,
Optional, it's up to the
Optional,
specific
yeah.
instructor. So we have remediation for the HESI proctored exams. That again is optional. I attempted to make that mandatory, but it did not go over with the faculty, so.
And what is your passing score? Is it 80%?
For,
For
yes,
grade
class,
school.
yes, absolutely. And then 80% of that is on exams. For exams.
Are you able to capture any themes from that student? The satisfaction, post graduation, was there anything, any kind of theme you could capture that might help? You look at your curriculum, could you?
Yeah, so we always trend everything, but there's nothing that's like just stood out consistently. Because, and I think part of that is not having consistent faculty members. So, everybody's gonna teach a little different. So this semester I'm teaching acute med surge in our 4th semester, and I've not taught that before. So, the information that we got last semester is probably not gonna be all that relevant for the students this semester.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are your students taking their exams computerized
They are, yes.
and
ma'am.
they're proctored?
Yeah.
Okay, are your exam banks coming from a standardized exam bank or?
Some,
Is
not all.
there a way to verify like the AR reliability and all of that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, so
and you've
we,
examined all of that?
yeah, we
like
do
the
that
process?
after every examination. Just remind.
I have another question too, and I may have missed this. Are you using the HESI A2 to admit
For the admission,
students?
yes, ma'am.
Are you looking at anatomy and physiology?
Yeah, so for our entrance
Okay.
exam, we do vocab, grammar, reading comprehension, basic math, and then A&P.
And are you looking at like a cutoff score with the HESI A2 in those areas in particular?
We do a cumulative score of 80%, and that just got increased in the last year or two. It was 75.
Pretty high.
Yeah, but we don't have a minimum for each section, no.
So you're not looking particularly at A and P as maybe, are you seeing a trend? Maybe the students that are passing
No,
in CLEX, they
no.
might be lower on that?
No, not consistent numbers.
Okay.
So the biggest thing I have seen is how long it takes students to complete the NCLEX after graduation. So about 2 weeks after our pinning ceremony is kind of the average. But we have some students that wait months. afterwards, so it's kind of hard to make them get out there and take it, so.
Are you having, like a percentage of ESL students?
No, we, a few here and there, but not many, no.
Do you know why they're waiting so long?
I don't know. I think because we accept students twice a year. So I think when they graduate in December, they probably like to spend time with their family over the holidays. Probably kind of put school on the back burner for a little bit, which I was guilty of doing myself as a student. And then I think maybe just taking a break rather than just continuing to hit the ground running.
Do you offer study groups for people that still haven't taken their boards after 4 weeks?
We don't know.
Jordan, can you speak a little to your application numbers? Because I'm looking back on the annual report. I mean, from 2018, you were accepting 52 students to 25 now. Is that due to low faculty numbers, lower application numbers?
Both.
Okay.
Our applications have decreased for sure. This semester, it actually increased, so I think some of it was for the pandemic, but we like to try and keep our numbers lower just for clinical. The facilities around us can't really always accommodate larger number of students, so we can definitely admit more, and we admit all of those that qualify anyways. But
Just because lower numbers than each student that tests, that 80% is harder to get to. with
Absolutely,
student failure.
yeah. Yeah, we have a very narrow margin of error.
Can you tell us, like in the last year or two, about how many applicants you've had that you didn't accept because they didn't meet your admission criteria?
I would say roughly 10, probably. Most students meet our criteria.
And as far as faculty numbers, what would you say is the main reason it's hard to attract faculty?
Money.
Yeah. And have you talked with your university administration about that?
Yeah, for sure. Well, since I started in 2018, I've talked about money.
Yeah. They just can't find that project.
Yes, still looking for the rainbow. So we've really tried to get nursing out of the negotiated agreement. So gen ed faculty don't always understand, so it makes it quite difficult. So nursing is on a 10-month contract instead of a 9, so that does help some. We did get it changed to where nursing faculty only work 4 days a week now instead of 5. So they end up working like 160 days a year, not too much. And then I was finally able to get a stipend approved over the summer to add on to the salary. So if you don't tell the gen ed faculty that. But unfortunately with stipends, I don't know how long that'll last. Because it's not a guaranteed thing, so it could be going tomorrow.
I can support your comments. It is very difficult to identify qualified master's prepared faculty in the Southeast Kansas region. So I can attest that those are absolute real challenges.
No, and yeah, so most of our new graduates are with a 2-year associate's degree leaving and starting working with what we want a master's prepared nurse to work for. So it is difficult for sure.
Now, you mentioned in your strategies, you mentioned simulation. Do you have a lot of simulation resources?
We have 3 high fidelity mannequins. We're looking to get another pediatric one. So we have a lot of resources. Time constraints and availability becomes an issue. So we try and be, as conducive to learning as we can with our students and not make them come to campus as much as possible. So like today, I'm supposed to be in lecture this morning, and then I lectured all day yesterday. And then the lady that's doing our lab, our allied health director left, so she's now doing that as well. So she's doing her full-time job plus someone else's full-time job, so snowball effect, unfortunately.
How much of your clinical is done in the simulation lab?
0.
0.
Yeah, so anytime we do simulation, it's supplement.
I have a question.
Yes.
In your evaluation committee where you look at your outcomes
Mhm.
and those kinds of things, have you identified an opportunity for students to do more presentations? To do like a formative assessment as they go along and actually comprehending what they can demonstrate? Not entirely a peer-led, but some of those kinds of things.
We have not.
I found that to be helpful. I felt I could do more practical formative assessment with, you know, I used to do a lot of concept maps. That trend has kind of passed. I've had them kind of do that as a group project. You have to monitor that, of course, because some students will do the whole thing and let everyone slide. There has to be some oversight. I've had them do a contract, a group contract to make sure everyone has a role. And they have to agree to that then with faculty oversight.
Yeah, we do a lot of like group projects and stuff in our fourth semester, so the students behind me will do those or have. But not across the curriculum.
Right, and then with the rubric.
Yeah.
So that you can really make sure you've got some good standardized way to assess the quality of that.
So Jordan, do you, and I'm doing this at the risk of Ray looking at me, do you ever do an ATT?
So, like, for the school,
Yeah, well, for the students to test before transcript.
yeah, so, we're placing a hold on their account now, to where we really want them to meet that 825 benchmark. So we just started that.
Okay, but this is what you would submit to a form you would submit to the board so that even before they get their transcripts to the board, they would be able to take their boards. It would allow them to take their boards a little earlier.
Oh, no, we've not done that.
It's a good idea. No, it's a good idea. I mean, it might,
It might
push them.
push them to do
To
it.
test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've got you've got the ability to be selective about that. If you know people still need to work on some things before they test. But it would allow them to test even sometimes possibly before graduation.
Good idea, thank you.
I have an additional question too, for the remediation part of it. Are you doing anything to identify your weak test takers, those with test anxiety? Doing anything to help with that?
So we do, give like an environment where they can test by themselves if they need to, but aside from that, not too much, no. So we just try and get them as well prepared as possible. You know, and all of our testing is geared toward simulating, you know, the NCLEX. But, you know, when I walked in to take it, I tested the same way that our students do now. And I'm not an anxious person, but when I walked in, it was like empty everything, put everything in this locker. And I was like, oh my goodness, like.
Yeah,
So you know, we try and talk about that, but I think until you actually go through it, it's really hard to understand.
yes, it is. And I've worked a lot with, I'm a mental health professional as well. I'm a therapist. But I've worked a lot with students around test anxiety. And I know Kaplan, I found their decision tree enormously helpful for one thing, because it helps students focus even before they test, as they've got a method to go through those questions. But then they do a lot with identifying your test taking style. I've had students that finish really early and do well, and some that race through and then they don't. I think it empowers the student to know how they test and what their foibles are going to be. And I'm just looking for a standardized way, because not everyone could go set up you know, a program like I could with being a mental health professional, but Kaplan has probably been my best go-to in the past. And it doesn't sound like your school has the money to help subsidize that. But I know that Kathleen, if you get enough students, that they in the past have given me a discount in another state, so.
Jordan, I wanted you to reflect on, and I know the state looks at the first time pass rates, but we know ACEN looks at a bigger picture.
Overall, yeah.
Could you talk about what your overall pass rates are? For
Yeah,
that
so
cohort?
overall is well over 90%,
Okay.
in that first 6 months. So most of the students that do not pass the first time have been successful. Of course, there has been a couple of outliers. I think in recent memory, I can think of 2 students that have not passed on that second attempt. Several have passed on the third attempt, but most of them passed on that second attempt.
Well, what made me ask is in your reflective comments, you clearly wrote in parentheses that there are students who take the exam just to see what their weak areas
And the
are.
student that told me that
How to stop
was,
that.
was one of the best students I've ever had. And he did clinicals for us, and that's what he said. It was $200. My job paid for it, so I'm just gonna take it and see how I do. Oh, thank goodness you passed, but I mean, like,
Yeah, so.
and like I said, that was probably one of the best students we've ever had saying that, so I can only imagine.
So when you do your assessment and you go back and you assess all the information, can you identify areas on the blueprint that's it's troublesome for your students? Or that the faculty need to work on, maybe introducing more into that area?
Yeah, so I would say, just basic care, seems to be one that continues to be less than, but we really hit that hard in first semester and then a little bit throughout, but I think sometimes, students forget that you have to introduce yourself. And, wash your hands and things like that. So it's definitely a learning curve for students, and as nurses too. I generally see that's our weaker area.
Gordon, can you speak to how many of your students are working full-time and going to school full-time?
So most of our students are not traditional students, and even if they're in that traditional age range, they're not traditional. So we have a policy that states they shouldn't work more than 20, but we don't call employers. So I would say more students work full-time than don't.
Do you have any academic partnerships with the clinical agencies where they're getting work time and clinical hours?
No.
Okay, that might be something you look into, especially for that last semester students. I know several of the hospitals in the Southeast Kansas region, Southwest Missouri region are doing that for partnerships because it gets them graduates, but they also help them out because they're getting paid to do clinical hours. So they're not having to work extra hours on top of that.
Amy, I'm kind of curious, is that becoming a highly successful strategy then? for
I don't-
hospitals?
I don't know that I could speak to that for the hospitals. I know there's several ADN and BSM programs, and not just, Wichita has adopted that. I don't know, Janelle, we really haven't collected data.
In Western Kansas, they phased it in and they started it again because of the shortage, but that's an opportunity for the hospitals to get some release, and it's a win-win.
Yeah,
So I see that's being initiated again. I'm just curious on how successful it is.
no.
Other states have done it. Not significant at this point.
Well, that's not because they quit, going in and out of doing that, but it might, kind of probably that.
I think it's growing quite a bit over the last probably 2 years since we started talking about it and looking into it from this committee.
It's a good thought, though, but it's a win-win.
For sure.
Any other questions? So I just remind the board that Fort Scott does still have full renovation from us. Thank you for coming. We are concerned about the pass rates,
Sure.
and I'm hopeful that you were able to gain some insight from others in the room that sit in your position and in other facilities, and I hope you can take some of this to heart. There is concern from the board regarding the program. So any questions for us?
I do not believe so, no.
Thank you for being here in person. I think it was really important to come in
Yeah.
and participate in this conversation. So I know that's hard on your job and being able to conduct students and those kinds of things, but I think it was important that you're here today and answer the question for the board. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
I think we'll ask Rasmussen to come to the table too.
Thank you. I think we're gonna step out.
Who's that about?
Good morning. Good morning for coming.
$59. And just to let you know, these are all summary. You've asked me for summaries of their report, so there is a full report, which they, I'm sure, have in front of them. So if you have other questions about what I gave in the summary.
Well, welcome. Thank you for being here today. You want to tell us a little bit about the report that you provided and maybe talk a little bit about pass rates and some of the things that you're doing to make improvements?
Yes. So thank you. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity to come forward and visit with you guys about our improvement plan at Rasmussen. My name is Jamie Magana, and I'm the Dean of Nursing for Rasmussen University, Kansas. Sherry Nelson, she is our program coordinator, specifically on the Topeka campus. And then we also have with us today one of our area deans, amazing Alexandra Torres back in the back. So yeah, we submitted our 2022 NCLEX pass rate report. And so that's kind of what a lot of this is going to be based on that report there. Excuse me if I stutter a little bit or something. I'm just very nervous. I think this is the biggest thing I've ever done in my life. Okay, so just speaking through a few of our different areas, a few of our improvement initiatives that I'm going to speak to specifically has to do with some of the things that you guys have been talking about already this morning. And we recognize that those are, they're on our radar as well as the NCSBN. So some of those qualities. So leadership turnover is a really big one that I want to speak specifically to. That's actually what I had as number one. And then a couple other areas that I'm going to speak to is our faculty development. We've done a lot of work on that. And then our curriculum delivery concerns, because we did roll out a revised curriculum like a quarter before COVID hit. So, and then academic integrity and some of that cheating and those violations. Ms. Nelson here is going to speak to a couple other areas.
Yeah, I'll be speaking about our simulation, our improvements with simulation. Also, some improvements we're rolling out to improve our retention rates. And then also a specific initiative for NCLEX pass rates.
Okay. So I'll just dive in first with the big one, the leadership turnover. So I've been with Rasmussen for 8 years next month. So I have the highest seniority out of all of Rasmussen University, Kansas in the nursing program, almost all of admission and everybody. So I've been a consistent factor throughout. And I moved into, in these 8 years, we've had 5 different deans. We've had 2 different associate deans. And then we've had some interims that have helped fill in. And so lots of changeover, but the big thing is in these last, I promoted to associate dean in March of 2020. I said, why not? The pandemic's here. So I moved up into administration, and then in September of just this last, well, this is September, so a year ago, I moved up into the dean position. So I've been doing administration now for almost 4 years, about 3.5 years. And the faculty are very comfortable with me. We haven't had a lot of our full-time faculty turnover. They've been pretty consistent. And I think that plays a huge part, is they know that I'm not going anywhere. They're gonna have to drag me out kicking and screaming. And they respect me. They know I'm not gonna ask anything of them that I wouldn't do myself. And so they're digging in their heels and they're working just as hard as me and Ms. Nelson here. So I think hopefully that speaks volumes for the leadership and the role that I've taken on and stepped up. And our biggest goal here, Nelson has been with the university for 4 years. So we've got some big people, and we grew from within. We started out as adjunct and we moved to full-time. So we're fully invested in our students and our program and our faculty. They're our coworkers. So I'm hopeful that, you know, together we've both sat down and established our goals, and number one is definitely NCLEX. The first time pass rates have to get up to that 80% mark. And then right behind that is completion. So we're working very hard on both of those areas, and they both are things that we talk about, you know, every single faculty meeting, twice a month. So that's kind of with the leadership turnover. The other big area is faculty development. So we've recognized that the faculty, they have the clinical reasoning, that clinical judgment and stuff, but maybe they haven't done the best job of teaching that. And so over the last couple years, last 2 years, I'd say we've really dug in hard, and Rasmussen University has a lot of requirements. We have an associate director of faculty training that is with our School of Nursing. She's top of the line, and she's doing trainings that are mandatory for all of the faculty throughout the university that focuses on the critical reasoning, clinical judgment. So we had 3 training sessions, and we've just kind of been wrapping all of those up. There's some simulation training as well that they're also having to do. I've started requiring my faculty to go to that clinical faculty academy. Those that were in clinical had to go to it before, but I've really started encouraging all my faculty to go to it. So those are some of the big faculty areas that I've really been working on. Now, the curriculum delivery, we were rolling out our revised curriculum in fall of 2019. And it was literally, like I said, March 2020 is when we had the lockdown. And so starting in our spring 2020 quarter, and we were rolling it out really slow. And just 2 quarters later, we had to shift completely to online virtual. That really altered our delivery as intended of that revised curriculum. So it wasn't until fall of 2021 when we truly were able to get everything back, all the classes back residential, and roll that revised curriculum out as it was meant to be. And I think that's a lot of why we started seeing changes. If you look back at our NCLEX pass rates, 2021, since that point, we've been trending up. We started dropping. It's kind of been crazy because we trended up from 16, 17, 18, and then we slowly started trending down for a couple years. And then in 2021, we kind of hit the bottom. And then since that point, we've been slowly trending back up. We've had a lot of changes over these years. And so it's been difficult to figure out what was the method here that fixed it, or that is fixing it, because we're back on track now. 2023, our current is showing at 80.3, so we're back at the 80% mark finally. First time since, gosh, we had 100% in 2018. So, and then we kind of started to drop, and then 2021, like I said, is when we dropped real low, and then we trended back up. But we're back up to 80.3 currently. And I think so much of the stuff we're doing has played a part in that. But we've gotten all the classes back fully on campus, like I said, as of fall 2021, which was a huge stride. But we really started to notice, once we had everybody back on campus, we started to notice what I think everybody has noticed: the cheating, the increase in accommodations. Like, everybody needed accommodations because they couldn't concentrate because they were mowing the grass outside the classroom. And the appeals just were going through the roof. So Rasmussen has really put a lot of initiatives in place as a whole that has supported all of our campuses, and we're throughout the university, we're starting to see those positive shifts. And for the most part, we're all trending back up, and we're almost back up to where we need to be overall. So a few of those that I want to speak to specifically has to do with the academic integrity. So what we've done is we've brought the students fully back to campus for all exams. We use ATI. That is one of our main platforms. So we've brought all of the course exams, everything is back on campus being proctored live in person with 1 or 2 proctors in the room. We didn't feel like that was quite enough. So we said, you know what, you're using campus laptops from now on. So we have like 100 laptops on campus or roundabout. And we're getting some more. I think that'll bring it up to 100 because I think we currently have like 70. And we make all of our students test ATI and course exams on the campus laptops. We give, for their scratch paper, if they get scratch paper, we've taken it another notch, and we're giving them colored scratch paper, and we're changing up the color every time. That way they can't do the quick switch out. I mean, we're looking at everything we can. We've really buckled down on the quality of the testing environment, because that was the big thing with the appeals. They'd appeal because, you know, there was too much of the door slamming. So we've handled all of that. We got the noise canceling headphones, and we've went to all those levels. So the other big thing is, I'm sure you've all heard of Quizlet and all those wonderful things out there that students love so much. So we started, Rasmussen has been implementing exam pools. So these exam pools have like they have a lot of questions. They have like 3 times the number of questions, and then they just, you know how exam pools roll out. So there's a lot more variety in the questions they get, and the questions are always randomized and everything, so they can't cheat. So we've started doing that. We've been rolling those out pretty slow. We've started them with the beginners, so our 1st and 2nd quarter classes. And I believe we have them in our 3rd quarter now. But we've kind of slowed that process down a little bit, just because there's been a lot of little initiatives, and we're trying to just kind of slow things down and let things work before we keep changing, you know, and adding more stuff. So that's something we're aware of and we're watching. So those are, and I will say for the most part, that has really helped. The cheating and that academic integrity violations have drastically dropped. Accommodations, they're still requested, but not nearly to the level that they were. And I'm not seeing anywhere near the appeals that I was. So we're doing things right. Okay, so I think I'm going to go ahead and let Ms. Nelson speak to the other items here.
Thank you. So, Dean Magana mentioned our simulation previously, and we have rolled out mandatory simulation training for all faculty that teach simulation. And this is, we have a national simulation director for Rasmussen University, and she has put all the training together. And also she put together a clinical reasoning, clinical judgment simulation model for us to run when we do simulation that really really stirs and really pushes that clinical reasoning, clinical judgment thinking for the students. And we use that in pre-brief and post-brief. It matches the NCSBN's model of recognizing cues, analyzing cues. And so faculty are trained on that to teach simulation. Also for retention, Rasmussen University has rolled out a shared governance platform now. And one of the shared governance councils is actually Nursing Excellence. And the early goal for the Nursing Excellence Council is working with those first quarter students. Yeah, we may want to. Working with those first quarter students, specifically in intro to nursing, patho, physical assessment, and devising strategies. And one of the strategies we will be working on this next quarter is time management. We have asked students in the early quarters, what is it you need? What do you think you need to be successful here in the beginning? And it's like, I can't manage my life in school. This is an accelerated program. Maybe it was a little more than what I expected. So I need help in managing that. And so developing these time management skills with them early on, I think will be really important with our retention rates. And secondly, the clinical reasoning, clinical judgment models, and developing in-course activities, because patho tends to mirror physical assessment. They kind of go together. We're talking about the patho of respiratory when they're learning how to assess respiratory and physical assessment, and developing clinical reasoning, clinical judgment activities, then starting at the very beginning. Lastly, one other thing, remediation workshops. I forgot to say that. So when a student does not meet our benchmark for our end of program comprehensive assessment, this is our new graduates. They take the comprehensive predictor and ATI, and when our benchmark is a 95% probability of passing NCLEX on the first time. And if they do not meet that benchmark, they attend an 8-hour immersive remediation workshop in person. This workshop focuses on, we look again at ATI data. We look at like adult med surg and the comp predictor, and we look at those, that content that's been challenging, and we incorporate that into our remediation workshop. So this 8 hours of immersion specific for that cohort. And it also, it's content and then NGN. Content, NGN item, the full item from beginning to end, with recognizing cues all the way to the evaluation on that content. And we delivered the first one of those in March of 23, just about the same, the same time that NGN was rolling out. And I do think that correlates a little bit with our increased NCLEX pass rates. I do think that is really helping students that do not need to come to the remediation workshop are coming to the remediation workshop. Lastly, the last initiative we rolled out for NCLEX pass rates is LAMP. And LAMP is Licensure Achievement Mentorship Program. And so this is a program where faculty volunteer to mentor just small groups of graduates. Our graduates have voiced concern about sometimes feeling a little abandoned after graduation, right? We pin them and then send them on, right? And so they didn't feel supported. And so this program allows us to support those students from graduation to NCLEX. Our goal is 45 days. We have been pushing 45 days from graduation to NCLEX. That is our goal. And for LAMP, we want 80% of our students to take NCLEX within 45 days. We met that benchmark. Right now, though, our other goal is 100% within 3 months by the beginning of the next quarter. We're a little shy on meeting that benchmark. We just rolled this out. We've done it 2 quarters. This is our second quarter. Yeah. So last quarter was our very first quarter of doing it. So these numbers are off just 1.5, like this, groups. So we get a lot of interest. It's voluntary. Out of our current, oh, man, I can't think of how many I have currently right now. There was only one student between the Overland Park and Topeka campus that did not sign up for the LAMP initiative. And what we do is just reach out weekly. Hey, how you doing? Get your exam date set, anything I can do, any resources you need, just letting them know we're there and then giving them a, if they will tell us what date they're testing, we'll reach out the night before just with a text message, a little emoji, you got this. And then the next morning, did you eat breakfast? Giving them words of encouragement then in the next morning. And they are so appreciative to know that faculty are still there and still rooting them on through NCLEX. That has been one of our big initiatives to help with the time to test. The final quarter instructors, which Ms. Nelson is one of those final quarter instructors, and she actually handles our remediation workshops. And she knows, I think she could go take the NGN and pass it with, an 85. She knows her stuff. So she teaches those remediation workshops on both campuses. And, in all honesty, I'll speak very frankly that, with the NGN scores that we've been seeing overall throughout the US, I've been a little bummed that they've been so darn good because we were trending up before that. And I wanted to truly see like, how is our work gonna, I wanted to hit that 80 without that. But then they changed and we went to the NGN and our scores have been, really good. And I'm very positive that it's not just, the test, that it's not just easier for them to understand. That's what the feedback we're getting, that it's like a doctor's chart and that's what we're used to and that's what we see. And so it's easier for us. But my hope and Ms. Nelson's hope is that, and our true belief is that everything we've been doing these past, especially the past year, but these past 2 years is really starting to turn corners and we're finally where we need to be. So I think that's it.
Thank you very
Nice
much
having
for your
you.
presentation. You covered a lot. You spoke to a lot of things that we wanted to hear about. So it sounds like you've done some great work. I will pass the board if there's any additional questions.
I'll go first.
There's gotta be something.
Oh, okay, I got you, Jamie, don't worry, I got this. Okay, so you said you were at an 80.3 right now. Do you still have people left to test?
So out of that group that we're looking at, we wrote it down. We had 35 out of 38. So we had 38 graduates between the two campuses. 35 have tested, and of those 35, only one failed. So we just have, just 3 more to test. Now we do still have, I think there's Topeka is amazing, and all of our outliers are done. Because we know those outliers sneak in and they blow it up. So in Overland Park, we have a lot less than we've ever had before, but we still do have, I think there's 7 that are still outlying and 2 of them are like from 2020. So, but most of them, a few of them are quite pretty old. Hope is that they're just not gonna.
And you guys
test now.
You guys do the authorization to test early.
We do not. Rasmussen does not allow the early testing. And honestly, I don't know that it's something that we would benefit from because the ones that are ready, they get in right away. You'll have the first 20 tests right away and you not much fully enjoying that because you knew that those 20 were going to pass. There was no question.
Did you guys
It's
use
the
to
outliers.
Did you used to do that part?
Okay. No, we had, no, like I said, I've been here 8 years and we never did. We did have one that snuck it through. It was a long time ago, several years ago. Snuck it through and got somebody in big trouble because they snuck it under and said, will you sign this? And they didn't realize what they were signing.
A lot of our students are testing really quickly because
They are.
they have their paperwork done and we work on that in our capstone class of, hey guys, let's open it up, let's look at it. You don't have the money today, at least let's get stuff filled out and then it's easy to go back
And they're testing really, really quickly from both campuses. Those that are wanting to test quickly are testing very quickly.
And the ones that don't, we kind of. keep going them.
So can I ask you about your academic integrity issues? So are you saying that you've got all these measures in place because they're not removed from school? They stay in school? If you caught.
Are you
the cheaters-
asking about like if they get caught, what are the repercussions of it? So we have a process in place. Usually on the first attempt, we have a whole academic integrity process. On the first attempt, then it's we do a write-up and it's kind of at the instructor's discretion of how it's handled. I think we've unanimously just decided that they take a 0 on that assignment and they get kind of that hand slap, a little warning. On the second attempt, then it's more aggressive. And then on the third attempt, we have an academic integrity committee that it can go to. So
you
we have
possibly
not-
have cheaters that get through to the
Yes.
NCLEX.
yes,
Okay.
yes. We have in the past, I would say now, we've really been kind of trying to nip it in the bottom as soon as we can. But yes, in the past, I'm sure we did. Especially when we were all virtual and, yeah.
I ask what your attrition is. You know,
That is one thing I did not look at that off the top of my head, but I can get that and get back to you.
I'd have to dig for it, but there was one of the reports.
I was trying to find it, but I couldn't find it. Yeah.
I saw the chart.
I know, there's a chart. Yeah, there's a lot of charts.
A lot of charts.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find.
100 pages.
So our current, well, I can say that for our 22-23 completion was 27.72 and 40% is the requirement. And we have looked at that. That is something that we're also looking at, and we're looking at it as a whole university. The kind of crazy thing that I've noticed is Overland Parks was 35, so we're close to 40. Topeka's was the one that was really low, but then Topeka's where we've had 100% NCLEX, and in Overland Park, we've had a little bit of struggle. So it's like, we have to figure out where's that fine line. And we've noticed that completion where we're really taking that hit is in our first, second quarter students. So it's at the beginning. And we have noticed that, and we know pretty specifically that our pathophysiology course, it's an accelerated program. Patho is difficult for a semester program, but when it's accelerated, it's a shorter period. It's really tough on those new students. So that is definitely something that we've been looking at across the whole university, but here in Kansas specifically, we're recognizing those students right up front. And we were waiting till their first exam. And by that first exam, when they only have 3, sometimes it's really hard to recover when that first exam score is so low. So we're trying to recognize them within the first 1 or 2 weeks. If they're not attending class, if they're not submitting their assignments on time, then we're kind of trying to recognize them right away. Get the faculty, we're really encouraging and trying to teach the faculty the importance of doing the one-on-ones, teaching them about the tutoring that we have available and all the library learning resources available. So we're working on that, and the overall admission process is also being looked at and evaluated at a higher level. I don't have direct insight into that personally, but that is also being looked at, the T-scores and all those things.
So then on your assessment, when you're going through and looking at the types of items are missing, does that equate to the types of courses that people are struggling with in the first couple of semesters anyway? Or maybe they eat through a little bit but they still never really got it?
Yeah, when I pull like ATI data or comp predictor data, even I believe some of our measurements would also correlate to the basic care and comfort, musculoskeletal, those things that are in either the first or the second quarter.
Yeah. And it's nice to have those, that mountain measurement report, because then we can reflect back and say, where is this covered? And we can go back to that course and say, you need to work harder on the funds because they're missing this. So we have also been looking at that, yes. That's why I said we have so many things that we're doing that it's hard to pinpoint which one is working. But something is, and we're not gonna give up on any of them until we're riding smooth sailing, so.
And they'll just found for us page 123.
It's asked the question, your most recent graduating cohort, how many started? How many graduated? So that, it's showing just the most recent cohort. And I know that's something that Jason looks at as well, in terms of graduation.
Are you currently nationally accredited
Yes.
through
Yes.
ASIN?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, we had ASIN and then CCNE. Both programs are accredited, yes. ASIN, based on with, we had our evaluation with the Kansas board and ASIN at the same time last March. March, yeah, and March 2022. Think about that. Yeah, so March of 2022, March of 22. So this, yes, March of 22. And ASIN approved us with conditions, and it was based on the same concerns that the board has. The NCLEX first time pass rate and completion.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, and congratulations on your pass rates currently.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a break in just a moment. Let's do one more business item here. We have the annual reapproval of the nursing programs. I will remind the board that based upon those two presentations that we just heard from, both of these programs have full accreditation. If we go back to, just approval, right, full approval. If we go back to the, on-site packet, the reason we asked these two programs to come forward was the pass rates that we've seen year over year. I appreciate the work that Rasmussen spoke to. We heard a lot of efforts and the results are coming forth. I don't know if there's any discussion by the board to look at one or either one of those pass rates. We didn't really hear where Fort Scott is trending. Fort Scott has had 2 consecutive years. There was 2020 was at a 77.78. That was prior to us moving that percentage up to 80. So at that point in time, that was meeting the standard. 2019 was at a 70%. That's indicated on here. That trend at Fort Scott seems concerning to me. I would say that. So I don't know if the board wants to have any further discussion or take any action. And we don't have to, I just, I think it's concerning to me to see those pass rates. I think from our 2 presentations that I heard today, I'll just speak for myself. I'm pleased to hear the work that Rasmussen has done. Some of the things that stood out to me is the individual help for each student and trying to really look at test anxieties and those kinds of things. There's a lot of work for supporting the students from the time of graduation to the time of test taking. I think there's a lot of initiatives taking place, and I'm not going to try to list them all that I heard from Rasmussen. I felt like there were some more gaps there for Fort Scott. I'm hoping he heard some good takeaways and can take those back. But I am concerned.
I do feel for Fort Scott that their faculty has taken their mandatory tutoring down to optional. if they're recognizing that and they're just giving them an option and they're not actually pressuring them to do more for themselves, I think that's a step backwards from where they need to be going. And I know that they may be short on money. I know he's got stipends or whatever, but you know, even some of just the things he was saying it's more concerning for me because I come from that place already, so I was recognizing some of those, and I know Amy and I made eye contact a couple of times because they were put out to me a year ago when we were in an audit. So I just feel like they're moving backwards. They're not pushing themselves to move forward, and you know, faculty need to be made aware of that. So with that, I would, Madam President, like to make a motion. I move to place Fort Scott Community College ADN program on conditional approval with a focus site visit to occur prior to admission of the next admission period.
I second them.
Any discussion?
Now, does that mean if they'll take the off of full, then they go back?
Yes, the motion, if that's what I'm hearing.
And what was the expiration date for full? What was the full? When was that?
I was gonna look that up. It's actually coming
It's
up
coming up.
fairly soon.
Oh,
I
is
think
it?
they were 20, maybe right before I came, and I know I'm coming close to 5 years, so it would probably be, it's probably in 24. I know they had an ASIN visit that we weren't a part of at one point. Yeah, and so, and I believe, yeah, they have their conditional status with ASIN right now because of those rates too.
That's clarified in that.
Do they admit twice a year?
They do.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Yes. Their motion for passing. And there, I don't know if there's feelings about, and they currently have full support, so we don't, we're not making changes to that. I don't know if we necessarily need a vote, and I don't know if there's feelings that we need to, I would.
They would be covered in our original.
Very good.
I personally felt like they did, they came forth with a lot of really good work. I'm very pleased.
I'm concerned that they've just let their academic integrity keep going for 3 times. Not just because they've proven themselves to cheat more than once, but also that goes to their ethical standard.
And I appreciate that, Patty. I mean, I think with Fort Scott, we gave them several tidbits of things that they can take away with. So maybe that's something that we can offer to Rasmussen, is that they would consider to look at their ethical integrity and maybe bring that down from a 3-step process to a 1 to 2-step process. Okay, we do need a motion to approve all of the schools, full approval, I can say that right. The annual reapproval of the nursing programs. So those that are at full approval, to stay at full approval, those that were conditional approval, the.
Madam Chair, do you want those as 3 separate?
I think we
Okay,
probably
we need to do each one. Okay. I'll move to reapprove the PN programs on full approval status through December 2024.
Amy, we have a motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Any abstention? Motion carries.
I move to reapprove the ADN programs on full approval status through December 2024.
Thanks, Patty. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Madam President, I move to reapprove the BSN programs on full approval status through December 2024.
A second. All in favor, signify, or maybe we should stop for discussion. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes. Yes. Any opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, how about? Oh, we got one more. All right,
Dan. I move to reapprove the two ADN programs, Donnelly College and Seward County Community College on conditional approval status through December 2024.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes. Any opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions?
I think I have to abstain.
Motion carries. Okay, now we can make a break. Okay, absolutely. We'll take, our clock is gone, so I have about 10:13, so how about we regather about 10:25, just take over a 10-minute break. All right, thank you, Bethany. So we are moving on in our agenda. We have our new regulation review process. I'm gonna maybe ask Carol to help us with this. This is a new process that's being redesigned for every committee and then ultimately the board as well. So Carol, talk us through our new process.
Yeah, it's very interesting, but anyway, we'll just leave it at that. There was a law passed, and so we have to, every board agency has to look at all of their regulations that they have in effect now, which the number is 90 for us. And we have to go through those and submit a report by by July 15th of 2025. That every one of those has been reviewed extensively according to what we have to put on the report. And that is what you actually see on page 158 in your packet. You don't have to answer the top part. The staff's going to take care, but part 2 has to be answered by committee or board members. Basically, I believe what's driving this is, nationwide, there's a concern that there's overregulation. And I know I've heard several times when I've taken regulation revisions across the street to the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules and Regs, that they believe that we have too many rules and regs. And so I believe that's what led to this law is every agency then, board, is going to have to look at all of those and answer the questions about necessity, the questions about potential for revocation, and then any additional information. Basically, you have to justify why that regulation needs to stay in effect and what would be the outcomes if it did not, if it was revoked. Again, there's been no changes presently. Whether a regulation is revoked or not still is the decision of the board. Okay, statutes, no. Regulations, yes. So I just don't want you to think that, you're losing control of that. You are not at this time. I can never speak for the future, of course. But anyway, so we really struggled, the staff, trying to think of a way in which this could be done as easy as possible for you guys. But it comes down to the fact it can't be the staff making this decision. It needs to come out of committees and then ultimately with the decision of the board. So we thought how we divided the 90 regulations among the committees. And education has a lot. This is not something you're going to be able to probably keep tabling and keep tabling and keep tabling, which is what happens sometimes. You're going to have to probably keep doing some of these every time or it's going to get very overwhelming to you. So we provided this form and so that you would know exactly what you had to answer. And initially we thought, okay, we would do this while you guys are talking. There is no way we can keep up with your discussion to fill in some of these things and everything. So what we came up with now, as far as the process, and again, if you have other suggestions, that is fine. This is just a starting point, is to have this form that's on page 158 in your packet available to you every time, and then you will get the regulations that need to be reviewed. I know this is very new today, so you didn't really have time to do this. You probably didn't understand the process. And we have paper copies if you would rather have paper copies, to take some paper copies, because you will have some every time that you need to come prepared with your answers. And then how we envision this happening is like, if you did it today, okay, you gave your papers to us, that's going to give us until December to get it in a nice form for the board. And then the board can look at it in December and approve it. Because there's no way we can get a form together today that's ready to go to the board tomorrow based on the discussion from all of these committees. There's just absolutely no way. So that's kind of how we were thinking this would go. You may have other ideas. I know they did it in investigative yesterday, but they only had 2, I believe, so that kind of helped. Any other ideas or?
We
It's
can
kind of-
try it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll try it. We can always improvise. Because what will happen then is after the board approves this, it will come to me, Jill and I, and then we're gonna put all of this on like in a spreadsheet. Because I have actually, I will tell you, I've seen the report that one agency submitted and it's about this long, literally this long, because everything has to be filled in. And then you get to these that have like 800 characters, 1,000 characters, 400, you know, that kind of fills up space. So it's gonna take a little bit of time for me to get that report ready. So if I can put some in after each board meeting, that will definitely help the process.
It worked very slick yesterday when they walked us through this. It's just perfect. You ask me.
We tried, we had a lot of discussion.
We got through ours.
And we did put the first 3, education has 37. So in order, the report, I believe is gonna be due July of.
The report I have to submit July 15th of 2025. They put us on 5-year schedules, and that's where the Board of Nursing fell. And so we would have to have these all reviewed in the March meeting of 2025, so that the final could go to the board in the June meeting, and then that gives me about a month to get everything into that report from that board meeting. So you're gonna have to kind of keep moving along on this.
We will have 5 meetings between now, after this, and 34 regulations. So that means we're gonna have to put 5 or 6 in each time.
And these are not statutes, okay? You're still gonna see some statutes, and those you're gonna do like you've always done. All right, these are just truly the regulation. That's this process that's included in that law.
So we have
Thank
homework.
you for
You have
the,
homework
yeah,
every
homework.
time, yeah.
so thank you for the explanation. Let's try it out. Becky piloted it yesterday and investigated, so we'll go next. So we'll start with KAR 60-1-102. On page 65, if you have a printed copy of the contract section.
That's the one, I think
159.
159.
Of your packet.
We'll try to put a copy of the regulations in your packet each time that you need to review.
We definitely need to improve the process. We should eliminate.
Great.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is pretty easy. It can't be eliminated.
right.
So the answer, the first answer is gonna be
Yes,
yes. It's
and an
necessary.
identifiable public purpose.
Absolutely.
Yes. School of Nursing with, or Kansas could not approve schools of nursing. School.
But ultimately, we're protecting the. Because we need to make sure that we have. However you want to word that, we only have 800 characters, but we had to pull back how it protects the citizens of Kansas. If it was, what would happen if it was revoked? It would be disaster.
Approved nursing programs that support public healthcare.
You know, however you want to say that.
Will eliminate the approvals of future school of nursing which provides public health.
So are you guys writing on your thing?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just want to be clear, because I'm not writing anything else.
I'm
Still kind of catching up.
That's okay, no problem, no problem. It's a new process, I understand.
That's why we want safe food.
Yes,
It's all about
We
that.
want safe
That's why
food.
we have to have, I guess we want to make sure the programs are gonna produce safe, competent students.
Yeah.
For the citizens of Florida.
Patty, are you writing? for
I
all of us?
am. I'm writing, I'm just writing.
If I can just say
Yeah.
one thing, public protection gets attention.
But that's a good.
So, you know, and remember our mission. So, just-
All right,
you
so
can do
this
whatever you
is-
want, I'm just telling you, sometimes.
This is what I have from all the words I heard. It would eliminate the approvals of future schools of nursing which provide public health and safety by training safe and effective students.
I think that's perfect.
Did I miss any of those benchmarks?
That's the maximum.
Yeah, maximum.
I think that's pretty concise and.
Yeah, but you have the words in there, Carol, that the legislators wanted.
The public health and safety and training of safe and effective students for the safety of Kansans. For these. Well-being. Of the citizens of Kansas. Nursing doesn't work out for me, I'm gonna be a creative writing.
It doesn't. So you will see this then, after we get it all in this form and
Okay.
everything, you will see it in your packet in December so that you can approve it and then it goes to the board the next day.
Perfect.
It would eliminate the approvals of future schools of nursing, which provides public health and safety by training safe and effective students for the safety and well-being of the citizens of Kansas.
So moving on to number 2, is the rule and regulation being revoked? No.
No.
If the rule and regulation is not active, would revocation require a change to authorizing or implementing the statute? It is active.
It is
It's very
active.
Yeah,
active.
they need it, not after.
They need it.
Yeah.
If they just put it in it?
Yeah, put in it.
We did that. We did that.
And if the rule and regulation is not that again, and if. There's a second motion.
And then you do have the choice to put additional information if you want to, that has a maximum of 1,200 characters.
I don't,
I mean, you don't have to.
I don't know that we have more. We did. Well, and knowing that we have homework going forward, this might be something good for the consent agenda for review. It's all been presented here. We've been discussed it here. We formulated that conversation, but it's just validating that it's made that transaction so that we might add that to consent agenda. Okay, so moving on to 60-1-108. So this one, I think is very similar. We might have a different answer on number 1, under potential revocation. I would say if we had a terminating school and they did not notify us of their plan. Well, we've seen some of that happen.
Yeah, I will just tell you, we get calls, you know, because somebody needs to go back and get their transcript or a record or something. And they seem to think that we get all the records when a nursing program closes down, which we do not. So that disposition of records, I think is extremely important that we know where those records are gonna be so that we can tell them who they need to talk to.
And there's a thanks for financial forward. And I'm very concerned that I don't know how to really do that in a concise way.
Well, and transferability, if they're gonna go to finish somewhere.
Start over second rereads.
Sounds like we need it.
And number 2.
public, identify public purpose, you guys already were mentioning the financial and the transferability. So that's helpful.
Protection.
Yeah.
How you're writing over there.
Got it.
Listen, they're not writing.
Yeah, it's just a note, there have been schools that have just shut down.
Yeah.
And students don't have any recourse. Yeah.
Which is still a public safety issue.
So, well, the number of questions is hot button topic right now, so it has a negative impact. On anything.
Even future hireability, there's no evidence that the school exists. Background checks don't go through.
I think our answers to two is no, under potential for revocation, and then 3 and 4 again are NA.
It's not hard to do. I bet we don't eliminate it within there and it is they're only necessarily involved.
I don't find the regulations were just completed.
How do you want to read us what we have?
Yeah, the need for schools of nursing to notify the Kansas State Board of Nursing is necessary to protect student interest, i.e. financial aid transferability, as well as the interest of public health and safety during a national and state nursing shortage crisis, which affects the health and well-being of all Kansans. I'm writing my ACE and stuff right now. I'm in that mode.
Okay, moving on to 60-1-104. This is a 4-page statute that is all of our definitions, so they. Oh, sorry, so, yeah. And 4-page, it's all of our definitions, so.
We need that.
Right, we need that for standardization.
Yeah.
Safety and the consistency.
He's got the words.
I love the standardization and all that.
That's the whole purpose.
Let me just pull my paper, but stop the meeting.
Stop the meeting. Do you need more? I was gonna say, take it.
Got it.
So we don't necessarily need motion and approval of these today. They will come back to us.
Right, we will put the form all together and everything and then put it in your December packet. Hopefully you can approve it at that point and then it will be approved before the next day, if that's okay.
Thank you for putting that together. Obviously put some thought into that.
Thank you. Yeah.
We are on down to the LPN residency apprenticeship program. So I think there's somebody coming to,
Not that's just the word. But they're coming just to the board. Just so, which is.
okay, so I would. I think there's been some conversation, some questions of our board staff to approve apprenticeship programs. So I just would make a comment from this committee. And allow anyone else to chime in on this. We are not in the business of approving apprenticeship programs. There was some, an action taken at the full board level. I think it was 2 meetings ago. We have to get the exact date where we did see a presentation from Kansas Hospital Association in support of apprenticeship programs. And we did make a motion at that time that we value them and we certainly are supportive of them, but we are not the regulating body of apprenticeship programs. And so to have, there's been requests, can we bring our program and have the board approve it? We do not have that authority to approve apprenticeship programs. So I would just encourage folks that are developing those programs to review the Nurse Practice Act. There's a lot of statutes and rules and regs with respect to delegation. So those are things you can use to help build your program. But I don't think that coming here to say, does this program meet the regulation, that we are not here to interpret that for apprenticeship programs. That's not our role. We do not have authority with that. Any other comments? So I think it's a great tool to, particularly in the nursing shortage, there's a lot of benefits from it. It's just, it's not our slate of business. So, okay. Unfinished business. We were going to talk about refresher course requirements, and Janelle's done some work and brought some information for you.
I just want to say, you guys have already seen, I think both at one meeting, we kind of looked at what other states are doing. Our whole purpose was to look at, is there something we should do, could do, want to do to make refresher courses more accessible, to get nurses back into practice? Is there anything we feel like could be done differently? So that was the purpose in bringing information forward. I brought you information about what other states are doing. We did find out we're kind of at the top when it comes to number of clinical hours, but our theory hours are not really out of line with what many are doing. If the range is 15 hours up to 120, which is ours. Most of them are in the 80 to 100 range. So then we also asked to look at what refresher courses are available, and that's where it kind of got to be a little sticky. Many states have their own refresher courses. Sometimes boards actually do the refresher or have that available. Some of them have delegated to like universities, so they have relationships with universities where those refresher programs are done. So those are only available to their own state because that's who they do them for. There are some that, like South Dakota State University, which is one of ours. They have multiple states that use them because they do all their theory online, and then the person is responsible for finding a place to do clinical. They help them with all the paperwork to make sure, to do what they need to do to get that. And actually, South Dakota State is one of the few that, even though their program is only 80 hours of clinical, they work with us on our 180 hours because it's different. So they are one of the few programs, very few programs. I think I found maybe 4 or 5 that could be potentials for Kansas to possibly partner with if they were willing to do that same thing in terms of the clinical aspect. But I
I
think
might refer you to page 164 while Janelle's talking. She has each one of these state requirements outlined out.
Right.
So you can review those.
so what's here are some that currently exist, and there are a handful that could be potential for us. Although I put kind of what the information available is, whether it's available for PN or NRN or just one or the other, what the costs are. So it's the information for you to kind of put together to say, there are a couple things I could see. One, I mean, do we need to pursue? We've always kind of, I can have continued to try to look at things that get sent to me or that are out there to try and provide more opportunities. Right now, for the state of Kansas, it's 120 theory hours, 180 clinical. And that's for both
The
PN.
next high state is what? 120 and
100, I think the next high is 100 and 120.
So we are.
Washington has 160 clinical.
Oh, thank you.
Is that a
Sorry.
regulation or statute? Goes out.
That is policy. Regulation says that the board sets what the refresher course is.
So that the boards that goes out.
So it's a statute, Carol.
Well, I just wanted to remind everybody, in case you're not familiar, who has to take a refresher course and stuff like that. In Kansas, if their license has lapsed for more than 5 years, in order to reinstate their license, they have to take a refresher course. And I will tell you, in when I was called over to the legislature last year at the beginning, and they wanted me to tell them what we have done to help the nurse shortage. There was interest in how easy it is for a nurse who's let their license lapse to get back into nursing. And I know another regulatory board made some changes in their regulations to kind of make it a little bit easier. I'm not saying that one way or the other. I just wanted to give you a little history on it.
So these are the rules and regs, Becky, to your point, so we could relatively easily make adjustments to those if the committee wanted to consider that.
Right, you see an increase in people getting in the refresher courses.
So no, so, okay. I was gonna add on to Carol because they would only need a refresher course if they have not been licensed in any other state.
That's true.
So typically, these are gonna be your refresher course ones are gonna be people that like, have been out of nursing between that 5 and 10 year, like, life happened, had a baby, never went back. And never got licensed anywhere else. Typically, you're not gonna see this because, they've gone on to other states and they're still licensed. So.
We did see an uptick in requests about refresher course or people calling about it during the pandemic. And maybe still a few since. But I think sometimes I did have a few, are there any that aren't only? And it's just really hard. Most of them are going to be done, at least the theory portion online, and most have some kind of clinical component. There are a couple states that don't.
I think the other thing too is even if they were licensed in another state, they were, removed from that state for a period of years too. Because we do tell them, if it's easier for you to go through whatever state, see what their reinstatement requirements are. And then if you have a, valid license, you can come back and just reinstate. So I think it is just kind of across the board. They're like, it's expensive everywhere, refresher courses. And refresher courses, a lot of them are like, I don't want to go back to school. I'm like, I get that, but
We don't want you to kill anybody.
yeah.
So do we also have to regulate if, let's say we wanted another school in Kansas to do it or something, don't we have to regulate also, why did you step out of your license for so long? Do we have to worry about that they were taken out of it? Maybe.
Well, that would be in the application process. I would say if there's any kind of legal reason that it came out, that gets addressed by them. They would look at because they would have to look at the legal history when they reapplied or tried to reinstate. And we have had that happen where they've had to take a refresher prior to getting reinstated, and as a condition of.
Because investigated.
Yeah.
To approve or not approve.
And I will remind the committee that Carol did have to go and present across the street about what are we doing to help support the nursing shortage. And being that we're at 180 and the next highest is 160, and South Dakota is having to make special accommodations for us to achieve our 180 requirement. I guess my question would be, is the 180 a little bit overkill?
Do you know where that 180 came from?
No.
It's been that way for quite some time, so I'm sorry. It's before me.
We don't hear that. You know a lot about this.
Adrian might have known, but.
Carol's got a lot of.
It looks like most of them are around 60 and 80, which is gonna drop us to less than half.
I didn't put Newman. Our two, South Dakota State I did because it was directly related to other. Newman University they do only RN. And they are our other provider right now. But they require clinical in Wichita, so it limits a little bit. I think they can do theory online, but you have to come there to do clinical.
How many hours is there?
They are our requirements, so. Okay, and Kansas is the only state that they accept, as far as I know, accept refresher students for. So they're, like I said, each state may have other refresher courses, but they are not publicly out there. Sometimes I could go to the board webpage and find them, but again, specifically for their state. And I've even reached out to a couple and they can't meet the requirements, so they don't want to mess with it the way it is.
If we looked at just what a normal 3 credit hour clinical is for them as they're in education, that puts them at 135 hours. But most people are between 80 and 120. So maybe we go down to meet the next high, then 120, which gets us close to what we're normally putting through in education with the 135. So it kind of aligns with what we do anyway.
That sounds reasonable to me. I like your justification.
One other question I might ask, just because I get it a lot. We currently have in that policy that for the refresher, that of that 180, what is currently 180 clinical hours for LPNs, that can be done all in acute or skilled care. For RNs, we require 120 of that 180 in acute care. There have been some questions brought up about what is acute care. That came from a PN side, I will have to say, about clinic setting, because that's where they were planning to work. So clarification from the board if they feel like those kinds of clinical experiences can be included in acute.
My concern is when they're gapped out that long, it's to catch them up on the technology. They have no idea if they've been out longer than 10 years, what any healthcare facility looks like, because when they last left, the technology was paper.
Right.
So that's the only reason why I really like that acute care experience, just to catch them up with the technology and things.
So maybe to address too, if we reduce hours, what percentage, do you want the percentage to stay the same in terms of what they need to do in acute versus?
Now, they don't have to be in critical care to catch up on the.
Right, no,
That surgical would do them good.
Yeah.
Or simulation, would we count simulation hours and?
I think we put them back into full clinical. I don't know that we would count simulation. And maybe split it up at 80% acute care.
I agree. I think 80% of this in acute care would be to just to make sure they're gonna be safe when they do work.
It's 96 out of 120. Is there any, especially for RNs, so what if they were specialized? What if they were pediatrics or psych? Do they need to do a piece of that in their specialty? If that's what they're going back to.
We could do that too. I mean, that's a good point.
So it was 120 or 110 of the required clock hours in an acute care setting for a total of 180. So if we went down to 120.
So it'd be like 96 out of 120 would be acute care. Which leaves you 24 hours and something else, specialty or whatever.
Choice. I like choice. Whether that's a health department, clinic setting. Yes. Would the committee like to take action? So you don't. Yeah, figure it out. Our current ferry is 650. Nope, 120 didactic. Unless we change it, then that back.
For the PMs, we think it's a 90, which is 2 credit hours. of General education.
Yeah, it's such a broad. I suppose it's kind of the thought about. Well, it's just the not theory wise, but it's enough kind of side. Yeah, I don't know, the body. You know, the disease is just living over there. Advanced.
So looking at the other states, we are not that far off on our theory requirements. So, there's 160, 120. Many of them have higher, you know, Delaware has higher theory requirements than clinical requirement. 145 in Connecticut, 120 in Colorado. So we may be more in line with our 120 clinical. Or didactic theory.
For both sides, PN and RN.
I think ours is for both PN and RN. I don't think we have a separate one. So Connecticut, for example, has 145 for the RN and 120 for the PN for theory. Colorado is 120 across the board, it looks like for both. Delaware is 120 for both. Oh, no, it says RN only.
Yeah, I didn't.
Idaho is kind of an anomaly. They're at 25 and 20 for theory. They're really low. North Dakota is 120 and 80, RN at 120, PN at 80. I don't know. I guess I kind of group or experts in the group. You're still at 120.
I still say that, yes, but there's still changes in everything now, and especially with COVID. I mean, we look at everything different.
Yeah, that includes policy and, you know, that's really the transition.
Yes. Well, and that's the. Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Okay.
I'm not making the motion, I'm reading you what I have for the motion.
Okay.
Okay, I move to change the refresher requirements for Kansas to be for RN 120 didactic hours, 120 clinical hours, with 96 hours to be in acute, 24 hours to be of a choice, with the PNs being at 120 didactic and 90 clinical hours. Did we decide on a split for them, or do they just do?
Currently, you allow them to do either skilled or acute for all of their hours.
Okay.
And that's where they're primarily.
Yeah.
We are seeing more and more LPNs. There is a push in hospitals to pull them back into the hospital, so.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, University Health just went back to try it.
It probably will depend on where they decide they're coming back into practice. Or if you need it, given their choice, you give us choice.
Exactly.
Okay, are we ready for the motion?
Make the motion.
Madam President, I move to change the refresher requirements for Kansas to be RN 120 didactic credit hours, 120 clinical credit hours, with 96 to be in acute care, 24 to be in choice, and the PN to be 120 didactic credit hours and 90 clinical hours to be skilled or acute by choice.
We have a motion? I second. Then, yes, any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries, so that'll be our recommendation going to the full board tomorrow, and if it's approved there, then we will start through a process of getting those rights adjusted. So it doesn't just go into effect with our approval here today, but it starts a process, so. Carol, thank you so much for all you do. Okay, I would like to table the next item, the APRN revised education regulations. I had a conversation with Melissa Orpeza, one of our other board members. She's the chair of the APRN committee. They're going to be looking at some rules and regs for the APRNs as well. So, as opposed to two separate committees trying to make changes on those at the same time, yeah, if we could just defer and let the APRN committee take a look at that, and if we need some additional changes, we'll look at that at our next meeting. Okay, the IEN credentialing verification information.
Just very quickly, what I did was we had some conversation about the possibility of adding another source for our internationally educated nurses in order to get that credentialing verification that we require. CGFNS is who we use. They're a gold standard. Many boards of nursing here, 51 states, require some type of credentialing service. CGFNS, it works in 41 of those 51 states. So I did put a little brief here about what other agencies are available. We kind of talked about Spantran had, and they're not on the list because they're newer to, and although they work with many education boards, I got clarification from them, they actually work with only 2 nursing boards currently. And while their costs are a little bit less from what they were saying, I don't think it's going to end up being a whole lot less for folks because of what we require in terms of the breakdown of educational verification. So this is just to let you know, this is what's out there. I don't know that whether you want to make a change. CGFNS, the reason I put the article in here, Carol was good about reminding me that it was there. They're doing a lot that for a while there, and COVID was a lot of that. They were really behind, and our internationally educated nurses were having trouble getting 6 to 8 weeks was usually the standard, because some of the countries are very hard to get that information out of. And CGFNS has been at it the longest and has the standard for it. So they have been working with NCSBN. They're making some improvements. I have not heard any complaints in the last year from any of our nurses about that process. I haven't looked into any of the other organizations that are listed there. So this is really just for your information that what we currently have, what's out there. I did bring one alternative. It's still a little newer than maybe some of the others, but just to give you an idea of what's available and whether you want me to do any further investigation of the others, but to give you information about what our current status is and whether you want to leave it that way or investigate something else.
CGFNS is the gold standard, I think, still, and I guess. I think maybe there's other ways for us to ease licensure rather than deviate from that.
I think one of the big things too about foreign educated is they apply before they really look into the requirements. And unfortunately, once we've done that and we send them out the information that, you know, they were educated outside of the US, so they have to go through CGFNS. I mean, I'm sure that that is a definite shock. Because, you know, not every state is the same. So, I think a lot of it is just depending on where you were educated or where your education was from to really research that state that you want to apply to before you apply and accept a job and say.
And Rayanne, I think you have an excellent point because, and transparently speaking, I did not fully understand that, and so a couple month ago, Ryan sent me a very detailed email of all the steps that it takes for an internationally trained nurse to get licensed in Kansas, and it's not an easy process, and you know, it is complicated. I think that's some education that we've asked to come to the full board, and I don't know if you're planning on doing that tomorrow or maybe at a future meeting, probably a future.
So maybe future? Yes.
She does a phenomenal job though, but I think we all could use some education on that whole process. So I don't know that just changing CGFNS is going to achieve
Well,
the direction that we need.
I think the other thing too is, you know, once they come to our state, having been through, you know, 5 other states, they're like, you know, these states didn't require it. Well, that's not, we want a more thorough look at our education of all of our applicants. So that is, you know, so I think that is just a huge, or they say, you know, well, I have my visa screen. Well, my visa screen work. No, that's not, we need to look at your education. It's not the same. I will say of this list, I get asked if we accept the Joseph Silney and Associates quite a bit. But most of them are like, you know, they've got their information started through CGFNS. It is a long process and it is something, you know, the nurse really has to be the one to get that information to CGFNS, or, you know, obviously CGFNS cannot evaluate. So I think that's a big piece of it as well, is they just assume that they can do things in other states that they, you know, here, and we don't work that way, so.
Well, and I think it's a good opportunity for the full board to look at, or maybe there's a committee that can own that, but to me, it's more than just this. Maybe were you gonna say something? Okay, thank you for that information. For you and Janelle. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry, I lost my place. Okay, our 5-year legislative review, we are looking at, wow, this is a long one, KSA 65-11-19. This is the approval of School of Nursing.
Yeah, this is the statute, so we don't have to do the same review process. It's just whether we feel like if there's any, this is again a legislative. If there are any things that you feel like are no longer pertinent or that need to be added, would be a legislative. I've also spoken to that several times about that process. That would have to be a sponsored revision. But it doesn't mean you can't. It's just an awareness of it's not the same as our regulatory process for our regulations. And so the 2 statutes that we have today are the ones for undergraduate education and for graduate.
So we'll start with the 65-11-19 and your, if it meets your expectations, we can just reapprove it as.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I move to approve KSA 65-11-19 as written.
Thank you, Amy. We have a motion?
Second.
Thanks, Ruth. Approve the second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, so then we have 65-11-33.
And it's basically the similar statute, only it's for the graduate advanced practice nurses rather than the undergraduate.
Madam Chair, I move to approve KSA 65-11-33 as written.
I second. Thank you, Michelle. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carried. The 2023-2024 nursing and mental health technician program site visit schedule. It now has whole calendar here.
Just want to make one note, since this came out, that we have had a change. The Mid-America College of Health Sciences will no longer be on September 19th and 20th. It's been moved to November 27, 28. And I will be adding the focus visit. And as soon as I find out what whether it can be, because it's a fairly full schedule. I don't know. We're going to be getting into December. But our January schedule is a little busier than usual. But hopefully, or that may end up being earlier next spring, and depending on, I just don't know where we're going to put it in this fall, unless it's December, and that just may have to be.
Well, thank you to Patty, Rebecca, Amy, Dee. I see all of your names on here many times, so great job, and thanks for all your support on that. Ruth, what's your name on
Yeah, Ruth's going to get at it in there.
Oh, yeah. Obviously, Janelle, you're getting on. Okay. Petitions for permission to test. So on page 196, these are all the folks that have requested permission to read.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the petition for permission to attest retest summary from May the 16th, 2023 through August 21st, 2023, which includes Emma Gerber, Guadalupe Espino, Charles Pinero, and Karina Vasquez.
Motion? Second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. And then finally, agenda for December meeting, we have our LMHT draft regulation.
Yeah, I have another question too. The LMHT draft regulations they've actually went out for some people to comment to see, what they think and what kind of changes, because what we did, the LMHT regulations really did not follow the same process that the nursing did. And so it was kind of difficult when you went out and did site visits and stuff like that. So a few years ago, the desire was to structure them a little bit more like nursing, and so that's what we did. However, I also have heard loud and clear that we have too many regulations. So Janelle and I kind of worked on how to put those together a little bit. And to be truthful, kind of what we did is what you see done with ASIN and some of those, how they put it in different categories and stuff like that. So anyway, it's going to look a little bit different, but we should have feedback and those to come. And the other question that I think staff would like to hear is what items you want on a consent agenda, since that's kind of new to us.
So I do think that our regulations could go on a consent agenda, being that we've already reviewed them here, and you'll just, the intention of that is that you would read that prior to the meeting, and then we would approve those items in bulk. if for some reason you have any concerns after seeing it, maybe there's a mistake, or maybe you've had second thoughts about something, you can certainly call for something to be pulled off of the consent agenda, and then that would come for full board discussion again, or for committee discussion in this case. I'd suggest that. I don't know if others, the other thing that I would suggest maybe go on the consent agenda is the petition for permission of the test. Those are things that can be provided to us ahead of time. You can review that as you are preparing to come to the committee meeting, and then you have concerns, same process. You could call that out. If by chance you happen to know one of those testers, maybe you want to abstain, you could abstain from the vote on the consent. Those are the two things that come to top of mind for me. Does anybody see anything else?
Yeah, I actually would just question some of the curriculum changes. I think when we have some more straightforward, that I know that's one of the things that they're obviously talking about consent agenda, when we have gone through the details and the processes here at this committee. Think that if there was something that was really a larger change or depth that was worth discussion, that could be pulled out, or someone could request that it be pulled out for discussion. But I think in general, that sort of, if we get the information here, we talk it through, have the opportunity for questions. So I'm not really sure how much more we get from reading the lengthy.
And Andrea, I appreciate that conversation, and I was right there with you when we initially talked about it. Because of the way the committee meetings fall to the board, the full board doesn't, until we see the curriculum changes here and those are presented to us. The site visits is what Janelle goes through and reviews with us, but the curriculum changes, we ask them to come and present their curriculum changes. And that, because of the committee meeting being the day before the board doesn't get the chance to review that document until it's been approved here. Does that make sense? So I don't know how to put it on the consent agenda at the board without giving them chance to review it. They would get, you might have like 10 hours between leaving here today and coming tomorrow morning to review those curriculum changes, which is what we talked through when we had some conversations about that. So I see what you're saying. I was hopeful of that as well. I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
In reality, I'm not sure what is coming from, like, when the motion is made. There's not a lot of meat to that motion, like, you know what I mean? Like, we're not really, that, in my opinion, is the role of this committee. And so we read through those, but I don't know that there is a lot that would be happening as we talk it through versus reading through and calling it out. So maybe you miss the opportunity for someone to really review and call it out if they want to have that discussion. But the way that we review the changes by way of motion, I don't know that a lot comes from that.
And I understand what you're saying. I think by putting it on consent, it would require staff to have these minutes typed and in your hands and time to prepare for the board meeting tomorrow, if we don't go through and read each one of those. And I see what you're saying. There's not healthy discussion around each one of those motions. I think the intent is that if you hear something that's concerning to you, we as committee chairs, I think, have the responsibility to call out anything that maybe there was healthy discussion about, or maybe something that has, a little bit, we didn't have unanimous, maybe there was, something more robust. But I don't know how to put those on a consent agenda. We can talk more about that, I think, maybe the board can too. So I'm certainly open to ideas and suggestions, and I'm not opposed to getting those documents, even if we had them by 6 o'clock tonight, we could review them in preparation of tomorrow's meeting. And it could then potentially be added to a consent agenda. It's the staff having the time to type those minutes and have them prepared for your review. Are you supportive of the major curriculum changes still being presented by the schools? At this committee level?
Oh, yeah.
I think that's, Andrew, I really do appreciate you bringing it up because I think that's the discussion that we've been having and that's hence why I think Carol's asking that question here. And please challenge me if you see that, if you see a better process for that. I have not been able to figure that one out. I would love to see those added to consent agendas for the full board. I just don't kind of put it in their hands with the schedule. Anything else? So as far as December's meeting draft regulations, like what Carol talked about. If the committee gets done. With no other business in front of the committee, we will call for adjournment. I think 11:29.
Bring the CNA.